The cold metal of his prosthetic legs gleamed under the harsh schoolyard sun as tears streamed down his face. Then she appeared, barefoot, hungry, yet somehow smiling, and whispered something that would change everything. But no one imagined what would come next. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that like button for more powerful stories that will touch your heart. 6-year-old Maxwell Wilson sat alone on a bench at the edge of the playground, watching the other children run and play with a longing that burned in his chest. The bright California sun beat down on his auburn hair as he absently ran his small fingers along the titanium and carbon fiber of his prosthetic legs, the most advanced money could buy. His father, tech billionaire Richard Wilson, had spared no expense after the accident that took Maxwell's mother and his legs just 8 months ago. "Look at the robot boy," jeered Tanner Green, the biggest third grader at Westfield Academy. "Bet you can't even climb the monkey bars with those metal sticks." A chorus of cruel laughter followed. Maxwell blinked back tears. He'd once been the fastest runner in kindergarten before the accident. Now even walking was a challenge. The expensive private school his father had enrolled him in was supposed to be the best environment for his recovery, but Maxwell had never felt more alone. "Mr. Wilson?" Ms. Bennett, his homeroom teacher, approached with a gentle smile. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." She gestured to a small girl standing slightly behind her. "This is Lily Carter. She's new to our school and will be joining your class." Maxwell looked up, meeting the warm brown eyes of a thin girl with dark curly hair pulled back in 2 puffs. She wore a faded blue dress that was slightly too big for her small frame and, Maxwell noticed with surprise, no shoes. "Hi," Lily said with a bright smile that seemed to light up her entire face. "I like your legs. They look like superhero legs." Maxwell blinked in surprise. Most kids either stared awkwardly or made fun of him. No one had ever said they liked his prosthetics. "They're not superhero legs," he mumbled. "They're just fake ones because my real ones got crushed." Lily shrugged. "My grandma says everything has a purpose. Maybe your new legs have superpowers you haven't discovered yet." Ms. Bennett smiled. "Lily, why don't you stay with Maxwell while I check on the other children? The bell will ring soon." As the teacher walked away, Lily plopped down beside Maxwell without hesitation. "I don't have parents either," she said matter-of-factly. "My grandma takes care of me now." "I have a dad," Maxwell corrected her. "Just not a mum anymore. She died in the car accident." "Oh," Lily nodded solemnly. "My parents are both gone too." "They got sick when I was 4. Maxwell studied her curiously. "Why don't you have shoes?" Lily wiggled her toes. "Grandma says we have to wait until next month when she gets paid again, but I don't mind. I like feeling the ground." The simplicity of her answer made Maxwell's chest tighten. His father could buy 1,000 pairs of shoes without blinking. "Are you hungry?" he asked suddenly, remembering the untouched lunch in his superhero lunchbox. "I have extra food." Lily's eyes widened slightly before she controlled her expression. "I'm okay. Grandma packed me a sandwich." But Maxwell had seen the flash of hunger in her eyes. "I have too much anyway," he insisted, pulling out his lunchbox. "My dad's chef always packs more than I can eat." The bell rang, signaling the end of recess, but not before Maxwell had shared half his lunch with his new friend. As they walked back to class, Maxwell moving slowly with his mechanical gait, Lily patiently matching his pace, she leaned over and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll show you how to run again." For the first time since the accident, Maxwell felt a spark of hope. The Wilson estate sprawled across 5 acres in the most exclusive neighborhood of San Francisco, a modern glass and steel monument to Richard Wilson's success as the founder of Neurotech Industries. Inside the cavernous main living room, Maxwell sat on a leather couch that seemed to swallow his small frame, robotically answering his father's daily questions. "How was school today?" Richard asked, his attention divided between his son and the holographic projections of stock charts hovering above his smartwatch. "Fine," Maxwell mumbled, fidgeting with the sleeves of his uniform. Richard glanced up, his expression a mixture of concern and distraction. At 42, he was striking, salt and pepper hair, piercing blue eyes that matched Maxwell's, and the perpetually tense posture of a man who rarely relaxed. Since losing his wife Jennifer in the accident, Richard had thrown himself even more completely into his work, as if building his empire could somehow fill the void she'd left behind. "Did you do your physical therapy exercises during recess like we discussed?" Richard's tone was gentle but insistent. Maxwell looked down at his prosthetics. "No, but I made a friend today." This caught Richard's attention. He dismissed the projections with a flick of his wrist. "A friend? That's wonderful, Max. Who is it?" "Her name is Lily. She's new." Maxwell hesitated, then added, "Dad, she doesn't have shoes." Richard's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Duh, she said her grandma has to wait until next month to buy her new ones." Maxwell looked up at his father. "And I think she's really hungry. She ate my lunch really fast." A shadow passed over Richard's face. Since Jennifer's death, he'd become increasingly disconnected from the realities of normal life, the kind of struggles his wealth had insulated them from. "Well, perhaps we could help her family," Richard said, already reaching for his phone. "I'll speak to the headmaster tomorrow." "No!" Maxwell said sharply, surprising them both. "Don't do that, Dad. She might get embarrassed." Richard studied his son with newfound interest. It was the most emotion Maxwell had shown in months. "All right, then. What would you suggest?" Maxwell thought for a moment. "Can I take extra lunch tomorrow? And maybe," he hesitated, "can I invite her over sometime?" "Indeed, of course," Richard said automatically, though the thought of a child from an apparently struggling family in their sterile, minimalist home made him slightly uncomfortable. What would Jennifer have done? She had always been the one who knew how to handle these situations with grace. Later that night, as Maxwell's nurse, Mrs. Rodriguez, helped him prepare for bed, he couldn't stop thinking about Lily's promise. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he asked as she helped him remove his prosthetics, "do you think I'll ever be able to run again?" The nurse's kind face softened. "With these advanced prosthetics and your determination, absolutely, Mojito. It will take time and practice, but one day, yes." "Lily said she would show me how tomorrow," Maxwell said, his voice filled with a hope that had been absent for months. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled as she tucked him in. "Then this Lily must be very special." "She is," Maxwell whispered as the lights dimmed, "and I think she has magic." Across the city, in a cramped one-bedroom apartment shared by 4 people, Lily Carter lay on a thin mattress on the floor beside her grandmother's bed. Her stomach growled, despite the extra food Maxwell had shared. She thought about the boy with the metal legs and the sadness in his eyes that reminded her of the sadness she sometimes saw in her own reflection. "Grandma," she whispered in the darkness, "is it true that everything happens for a reason?" Eleanor Carter, 63 and exhausted from her double shift as a hospital custodian, turned toward her granddaughter. "That's what I believe, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" "I met a boy today. He has robot legs because he was in an accident. He's really rich, but he's really sad too." Lily paused. "I told him I could teach him to run again." Eleanor propped herself up on one elbow, concern etching her weathered face. "Lily, honey, if this boy lost his legs, you shouldn't make promises you can't keep." Lily's expression remained serene. "But I can, Grandma. Remember how you taught me to run after Mama and Daddy died? When I was so sad, I couldn't even walk?" Eleanor's eyes misted over at the memory. After Lily's parents had died of carbon monoxide poisoning, while Lily was at a sleepover, the child had fallen into such despair she'd barely moved for weeks. Eleanor had indeed taught her to run again, not physically, but emotionally. "That's different, sweetheart," Eleanor said gently. "No, it's not," Lily insisted with the clarity sometimes only children possess. "His legs might be made of metal, but it's his heart that doesn't know how to run anymore, just like mine didn't." Eleanor stared at her granddaughter in wonder. At 7 years old, Lily sometimes spoke with a wisdom that seemed ancient. "Well," Eleanor said finally, "if anyone can teach someone to run with their heart, it's you, my lily flower." Lily smiled as she drifted towards sleep, already planning what she would tell Maxwell tomorrow. She didn't understand why, but she felt certain that meeting him wasn't an accident. Grandma always said God puts people in our path for a reason. Maybe she and Maxwell were supposed to help each other. The next morning, Maxwell arrived at school with 2 lunchboxes and a nervous flutter in his stomach. His father's chef had outdone himself. Both containers were filled with gourmet sandwiches, fresh fruit, homemade cookies, and juice boxes. Mrs. Rodriguez had helped him pack the second lunchbox into his backpack with a knowing smile but no questions. When Maxwell's private driver helped him out of the sleek black Tesla at the school entrance, his eyes immediately began scanning the schoolyard for Lily. Would she really show him how to run, or had that just been something nice to say? Adults were always telling him he'd run again someday, but their voices held the hollow ring of a promise they didn't truly believe. He didn't see her in the morning assembly, and by recess, Maxwell's hope had begun to dim. He made his way to the same bench as yesterday, his movements still awkward despite months of physical therapy. "You came!" Lily's voice rang out as she bounded toward him, her face bright with excitement. Today her hair was in a single puff at the top of her head, and she wore the same faded blue dress. Still no shoes. "I brought you lunch," Maxwell said, holding out the extra lunchbox. Lily's eyes widened. "For me, really?" "Yeah." Maxwell felt a rush of warmth at her reaction. "My dad's chef made it. He makes the best cookies." Lily carefully took the lunchbox, holding it like a precious treasure. "Thank you, Maxwell. That's the nicest thing anyone at this school has done for me." She sat down next to him. "Are you ready to learn how to run?" Maxwell swallowed hard. "But I can't. Not with these." He gestured at his prosthetics. "Those are just your outside legs," Lily said with complete confidence. "The real running happens in here first." She tapped his chest right over his heart. Maxwell frowned. "That doesn't make any sense." "It does, though," Lily insisted. "When my parents died, I couldn't move at all. Grandma said my body forgot how because my heart was too sad." She leaned closer. "The secret is to remember what it feels like to run. Really remember with your whole body before you try with your legs." "I don't understand," Maxwell said, frustration edging into his voice. "Close your eyes," Lily instructed. Maxwell hesitated, then complied. "Now remember running, the fastest you ever ran. How did your heart feel? How did the wind feel on your face?" Maxwell's brow furrowed in concentration. I was at the beach with my mom. We were racing to the water." His voice grew softer. "I could feel the sand between my toes and the sun on my back. Mum was laughing, telling me I was too fast for her." "Hold on to that feeling," Lily whispered. "That's the first step." Maxwell opened his eyes, disappointed to find himself still on the bench, metal legs stretched out in front of him. "But I'm still not running." "We just planted the seed," Lily explained patiently. "We have to water it every day until it grows." Across the playground, Ms. Bennet observed the 2 children with interest. The friendship forming between the billionaire's son and the scholarship student from one of the city's poorest neighborhoods was unexpected but touching. She made a mental note to pair them for the upcoming science project. During lunch, Maxwell and Lily sat together under a large oak tree at the edge of the playground. Maxwell noticed how carefully Lily ate, taking small bites and savoring each one as if committing the taste to memory. "Do you live in a mansion?" Lily asked between bites of her sandwich. Maxwell nodded. It's really big, but kind of empty. Just me, my dad, Mrs. Rodriguez, she's my nurse, and some staff. He hesitated. My dad said you can come over sometime if you want. Lily's eyes lit up. Really? I've never been to a mansion before. Then her expression faltered. But I don't think my grandma could drive me. She works a lot and we don't have a car. My driver could pick you up, Maxwell suggested eagerly. We have 3 cars. Lily's eyes widened. 3 whole cars? Just for your family? Maxwell suddenly felt self-conscious about his wealth in a way he never had before. Yeah. My dad has more at his other houses, but we only use 3 here. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Grandma says it's not about how much stuff you have, it's about how much love you have. She looked at Maxwell with genuine curiosity. Do you have a lot of love in your mansion? The question hit Maxwell like a physical blow. Before the accident, the answer would have been an immediate yes. His mother had filled their home with warmth and laughter. But now, we used to, he said quietly. Lily reached out and placed her small hand over his. Maybe we can bring some back. After school, Maxwell found himself telling his father about Lily's running lesson as they rode home in the Tesla. She said I need to remember what it feels like before I can do it again, Maxwell explained, his voice animated in a way Richard hadn't heard since before the accident. Richard glanced at his son with a mixture of concern and hope. That's an interesting approach, different from what your physical therapists have suggested. But Dad, she knows things, Maxwell insisted. She lost her parents too, both of them, and she learned how to run again after that. Richard's expression softened. Maxwell, I'm glad you found a friend who understands some of what you're going through, but remember that your situation is different. Your therapists are experts in prosthetic adaptation. Maxwell slumped back in his seat. You don't believe me? Richard sighed, reaching over to tousle his son's hair. I believe that this friendship is important to you, and that's what matters. Why don't you invite Lily over this weekend? I'd like to meet her. Maxwell's face lit up. Really? Can she come Saturday? Of course. Richard pulled out his phone. I'll need her guardian's contact information to arrange it. That night, as Maxwell lay in bed, he closed his eyes and tried Lily's exercise again. He pictured himself running on the beach, feeling the spray of the ocean, hearing his mother's laughter. But this time, when he imagined looking down, he saw his prosthetic legs moving swiftly and surely beneath him. For the first time since the accident, Maxwell fell asleep with a smile on his face. Eleanor Carter stared at the sleek black Tesla parked outside their apartment building with a mixture of apprehension and disbelief. When she'd received the call from Richard Wilson himself, asking if Lily could spend Saturday at their home, she'd nearly dropped the phone. The richest man in San Francisco, perhaps in all of California, was inviting her granddaughter over for a play date. Are you sure this is a good idea? She asked Lily, who was practically vibrating with excitement beside her. Eleanor had used part of her meager savings to buy Lily a new dress for the occasion, a simple yellow sundress that had made Lily twirl with delight when she first tried it on. It's going to be the best day ever, Grandma, Lily assured her, clutching the small hand-drawn card she'd made for Maxwell. Don't worry. A tall, uniformed driver emerged from the Tesla and approached them with a polite smile. Ms. Carter and Miss Lily, I'm Thomas, the Wilson family driver. It's a pleasure to meet you both. He opened the rear door with a slight bow. Eleanor knelt to Lily's level. You be on your best behavior, you hear, and call me if you need anything at all. I will, Grandma, Lily promised, hugging Eleanor tightly before climbing into the luxurious vehicle, her eyes wide at the leather seats and glowing displays inside. As the car pulled away, Eleanor stood on the sidewalk, a knot of worry in her stomach. She'd spent the night researching Richard Wilson and was overwhelmed by what she'd found. The man was worth billions, a tech innovator whose neural interface technology was revolutionizing medicine. What could people like that possibly want with her Lily? Inside the Tesla, Lily was peppering Thomas with questions about the car, the Wilson family, and anything else that came to mind. The driver answered patiently, charmed by her genuine curiosity. "Does Maxwell have a swimming pool?" Lily asked, pressing her face against the window as they entered a neighborhood with homes larger than any she'd ever seen. "Yes, Miss Lily, both indoor and outdoor pools," Thomas replied. Lily's eyes widened further. "Two pools? Why would anyone need two pools?" Thomas chuckled. "The indoor pool is heated for year-round swimming, while the outdoor pool is part of the garden landscape." When they finally pulled through the massive iron gates of the Wilson estate, Lily fell silent in awe. The mansion rose before them, a modern masterpiece of glass, steel and stone that seemed to merge with the cliffside it was built upon, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Maxwell was waiting at the entrance, standing with the aid of his specialized crutches rather than his wheelchair, a sign of his progress and determination to impress his friend. When he spotted the Tesla, his face broke into a wide smile. "You came," he called as Thomas helped Lily from the car. "Your house is like a castle," Lily exclaimed, running to him. She skidded to a stop just before reaching him, careful not to knock him off balance. "I made you this." She handed him the card, suddenly shy. Maxwell opened it carefully. Inside, Lily had drawn a stick figure with prosthetic legs running across the page with a big smile. Above it, in careful letters, she'd written, "Running starts with believing you can." "I love it," Maxwell said softly, genuine emotion in his voice. "Come on, I want to show you everything." Richard Wilson watched from the doorway as the two children made their way inside, Maxwell moving more confidently with his crutches than Richard had seen in months. There was something about this little girl that had sparked a change in his son, and for that alone Richard was grateful. "Mr. Wilson," Lily said when she noticed him, extending her small hand formally. "Thank you for inviting me to your castle." Richard smiled despite himself, taking her tiny hand in his. "It's a pleasure to have you, Lily. And it's just a house, albeit a large one." "It's the biggest house I've ever seen," Lily said matter-of-factly. "And the prettiest." Maxwell gave his father an imploring look. "Can I show Lily around now?" "Of course," Richard nodded. "Mrs. Rodriguez will accompany you. Lunch will be at noon in the garden pavilion." As Mrs. Rodriguez appeared to escort them, Richard found himself studying Lily more closely. There was something unnervingly direct about her gaze, a wisdom that seemed at odds with her young age and circumstances. He'd had his security team run a discreet background check on the Carters. Standard procedure, he told himself, when inviting strangers into their home. What they'd found was heartbreaking but unremarkable. Eleanor Carter, 63, raising her orphaned granddaughter on a custodian's salary after the tragic death of Lily's parents. They lived in one of the city's most economically depressed neighborhoods. Eleanor had applied for a scholarship to Westfield Academy, which had a program for gifted children from disadvantaged backgrounds, a program Jennifer had helped establish before her death. The irony wasn't lost on Richard. His late wife's charitable initiative had brought this child into their lives, and now she was somehow helping Maxwell in ways Richard's billions couldn't. Maxwell proudly showed Lily his room, a massive space filled with every toy and gadget a child could want, a stark contrast to the small corner of the apartment Lily shared with her grandmother. "You have so many things," Lily marveled, running her fingers over the elaborate train set that occupied one section of the room. "Do you play with all of them?" Maxwell shrugged. "Not really, not anymore." He hesitated, then added, "I used to play outside more before." He gestured at his prosthetics. Lily nodded understanding. "Show me your favorite thing in the whole house." Maxwell's face lit up. "It's not in the house, it's outside. Can you help me down to the beach?" With Mrs. Rodriguez following at a discreet distance, Maxwell led Lily through the mansion and down a private path that wound from the manicured gardens to a secluded stretch of beach below the cliffs. It was a challenging journey for Maxwell, but he was determined, using his crutches with growing confidence. "This is where my mom and I would race," Maxwell explained when they finally reached the sand. "It's my favorite place in the whole world." Lily slipped off her new sandals immediately, digging her toes into the sand with delight. "It's beautiful," she breathed, looking out at the vast blue ocean. "I've never been to the beach before." Maxwell looked at her in disbelief. "Never? But we live in San Francisco." Lily shrugged. "Grandma works a lot, and it's hard to get here on the bus." They sat together on a large boulder, watching the waves crash against the shore. Mrs. Rodriguez had brought down a blanket and some drinks, setting them up nearby before giving the children some space to talk. "I've been practicing what you told me," Maxwell said after a comfortable silence. "About remembering what it feels like to run." "Good," Lily nodded approvingly. "That's the first part. The second part is believing you can do it with your new legs." "But how? They're so different from real legs." "They're real now," Lily said simply. "They're your legs. You just have to make friends with them." Maxwell frowned. "Make friends with them? They're not people, Lily." "Everything has a spirit," Lily said with conviction. "Grandma taught me that. Your legs have a spirit too, and right now they don't know you yet." Maxwell considered this unusual perspective. "How do I make friends with them?" "Talk to them. Thank them for helping you walk. Ask them to help you run." Lily's expression was completely serious. "And then trust them to do it." "That's silly," Maxwell protested weakly, though part of him wanted to believe her. Lily shrugged. "Try it tonight when no one's watching. Just try." Their conversation was interrupted by Thomas calling down that lunch was ready. The climb back up to the house was arduous for Maxwell, but he refused any additional help, determined to show Lily he could do it himself. The lunch Richard had arranged in the garden pavilion was a casual affair by his standards, though Lily's eyes widened at the spread prepared by the chef. Tiny sandwiches cut into fun shapes, fruit arranged to look like flowers, and a chocolate fountain with various treats for dipping. "Did your mom teach you about making friends with things?" Maxwell asked as they ate. Lily shook her head. "My mom was a scientist. She studied stars. She liked facts and evidence." A shadow passed over her face. "She wouldn't have believed in talking to prosthetic legs. Then where did you learn it?" "From Grandma. She's a healer, not like doctors, but in the old ways. She says everything in the world has energy and spirit, even things people think are just objects." Lily dipped a strawberry into the chocolate fountain. "After my parents died, I had nightmares. Grandma taught me to make friends with the darkness so I wouldn't be scared anymore." Richard, who had joined them for lunch, listened to this exchange with fascination. "And did it work?" he asked, unable to help himself. "Making friends with the darkness." Lily turned her direct gaze to him. "Yes, Mr. Wilson, the darkness has gifts too, if you're not afraid to look for them." The Monday after Lily's visit, Maxwell arrived at school with renewed determination. He'd spent Sunday doing something that would have seemed ridiculous to him just days earlier, talking to his prosthetic legs. Following Lily's advice, he had sat alone in his room, feeling only slightly foolish as he whispered to the gleaming metal and carbon fiber extensions of himself. "Hello," he'd said quietly. "I know we're still getting to know each other, but I need your help. I want to run again." Now, as his driver helped him from the car, Maxwell spotted Lily waiting for him by the school entrance, wearing the yellow dress from Saturday and, he noticed with surprise, new shoes. They were simple white sneakers, but definitely new. "I love your shoes," Maxwell said as he approached, maneuvering with his crutches. Lily beamed. "Your dad bought them for me, and he got Grandma a new dress too." She cried, but she said they were happy tears. Maxwell blinked in surprise. His father hadn't mentioned anything about buying gifts for the Carters. "That was nice of him," he said, making a mental note to thank his dad later. "Did you talk to your legs?" Lily asked eagerly as they made their way to class. Maxwell nodded, feeling a blush creep into his cheeks. "It felt silly, but I did it." "Good," Lily said with satisfaction. "Now we can start the next part." Their conversation was interrupted by Miss Bennet calling the class to order. As the children settled into their seats, she announced, "Today we'll be assigning partners for the science fair project. You'll have 3 weeks to work together on creating a demonstration of a scientific principle of your choice." Maxwell and Lily exchanged hopeful glances. "Maxwell Wilson and Lily Carter," Ms. Bennet called out, and both children broke into wide smiles. Throughout the morning lessons, Maxwell found himself more engaged than he had been since returning to school after the accident. When recess finally came, he and Lily hurried to their usual bench, eager to continue their running lessons. "Today, we're going to try something new," Lily announced once they were settled. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching too closely. "Can you set your crutches aside and just sit with your legs touching the ground?" Maxwell hesitantly did as she asked, placing his crutches next to him on the bench. His prosthetic feet now touched the pavement, and he felt the familiar pressure where they connected to what remained of his legs. "Now close your eyes and imagine roots growing from your new feet into the ground," Lily instructed, "like you're a tree." Maxwell closed his eyes, feeling slightly ridiculous, but willing to try. He visualized roots extending from his prosthetic feet, pushing into the earth, anchoring him. "Feel the energy of the ground coming up through your roots, into your legs, and up through your body," Lily continued, her voice soft but confident. To his surprise, Maxwell felt a strange warmth spreading from the points where his prosthetics connected to his body. It was probably just his imagination, he told himself, but it felt real. "The earth is helping your legs learn how to work with you," Lily explained. "It's teaching them what to do." They continued this exercise for several minutes, with Maxwell focusing intently on the sensation of being connected to the ground through his prosthetic limbs. When he finally opened his eyes, he felt oddly energized. "I felt something," he admitted, "like warmth moving up from my legs." Lily nodded, unsurprised. "That's the Earth's energy." "Tomorrow, we'll try standing without your crutches." "I can already stand without crutches," Maxwell pointed out, "just not for very long, and I can't walk well without them yet." "But you weren't friends with your legs before," Lily said with complete confidence. "Now they're starting to trust you." Across the playground, Tanner Green and his friends had noticed the intense concentration on Maxwell's face as he sat with his eyes closed. Sensing an opportunity for mischief, Tanner nudged his friends and started making his way toward the bench. "Hey, robot boy," Tanner called as he approached. "What are you doing, getting a software update?" His friends snickered behind him. Maxwell's eyes snapped open, his moment of peace shattered. But before he could respond, Lily was on her feet, standing protectively in front of him. "Go away," she said firmly, her small frame somehow imposing despite her size. "We're busy," Tanner laughed. "What are you going to do about it, barefoot girl?" "Oh wait, you finally got shoes." He looked down at her new sneakers. "Did Robot Boy's daddy buy them for you? Are you his charity case now?" Maxwell felt a surge of anger, reaching for his crutches to stand up. But Lily remained perfectly calm. "You're just jealous," she said matter-of-factly, "because Maxwell has something you don't have." "And Tanner scoffed. "What, metal legs?" "No," Lily replied evenly. "Courage. It takes more courage to learn to walk again than you'll ever need to be a bully." Tanner's face flushed red. He opened his mouth to retort, but was interrupted by Miss Bennet's arrival. "Is everything all right here?" the teacher asked, her gaze moving between the children. "We're fine, Miss Bennet," Lily answered cheerfully. "Tanner was just leaving." With a scowl, Tanner and his friends retreated. Miss Bennet lingered a moment longer, ensuring all was well before moving on to supervise other areas of the playground. "You didn't have to do that," Maxwell said quietly once they were alone again. "Stand up for me, I mean." Lily sat back down beside him. "Friends protect each other. That's what my mom always said." Maxwell smiled. "My mom used to say that too." They spent the rest of recess discussing ideas for their science project, with Lily suggesting they demonstrate how prosthetic limbs work, using simple machines as models. "We could show how pulleys and levers are like muscles and joints," she explained excitedly. "And maybe your dad could help us. He makes brain computers, right?" "Neural interfaces," Maxwell corrected. "But yeah, that's a cool idea." After school, Maxwell was surprised to find his father waiting in the Tesla instead of their usual driver. Richard rarely picked him up from school himself, typically buried in meetings until late evening. "Dad!" Maxwell exclaimed as he approached the car. "What are you doing here?" Richard smiled, helping Maxwell into the passenger seat. "I thought I'd take the afternoon off. We haven't spent much time together lately." As they drove home, Maxwell couldn't contain his curiosity. "Lily said you bought her new shoes and got a dress for her grandma. Is that true?" Richard nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "I hope that was all right. I noticed on Saturday that her shoes were quite worn, and when Thomas picked her up, I realized their circumstances are challenging." He paused. "Your mother would have done the same." Maxwell felt a warmth spread through his chest. "It was really nice, Dad. Thank you." "Lily's quite an extraordinary child," Richard continued. "She reminds me a bit of your mother. That same directness and intuition." "She's teaching me to run again," Maxwell said, then quickly added, "not just physically, but like, in my heart too." Richard glanced at his son, surprise evident on his face. "Is that why you've seemed different these past few days? Happier?" Maxwell nodded. "Lily says I need to make friends with my new legs and trust them. It sounds weird, but..." He hesitated. "I think it's working. I feel different when I practice what she teaches me." Instead of the skepticism Maxwell expected, his father was quiet for a long moment. "You know," Richard finally said, "the neural interface technology my company develops is based on a similar principle, creating a harmonious relationship between technology and the human body. Perhaps Lily understands intuitively what our scientists spend years researching." They pulled into the driveway of their estate, but instead of heading inside, Richard surprised Maxwell by suggesting they go down to the beach. "Really?" Maxwell asked excitedly. "But don't you have work calls?" "They can wait," Richard said, helping Maxwell with his crutches. "I'd like to see what Lily's been teaching you." Down on the beach, with the afternoon sun warm on their faces and the sound of waves creating a peaceful backdrop, Maxwell showed his father the visualization exercises Lily had taught him. Richard watched with undisguised fascination as his son closed his eyes and focused on connecting with his prosthetic limbs. "She says everything has a spirit," Maxwell explained. "Even these," he tapped his metal legs, "and I need to respect them and work with them, not just try to make them do what I want." Richard nodded slowly. "That's not so different from how adaptive neural technology functions. The most successful interfaces are those that create a collaborative relationship between the technology and the user's nervous system." He smiled at his son's surprised expression. "What? Did you think your old dad couldn't understand a little spiritual wisdom?" Maxwell grinned. "I guess I thought you only believed in science." "Your mother taught me that there's often wisdom in perspectives that seem unscientific at first glance," Richard said softly. "Some things work before we understand why they work." As they sat together on the beach, talking more openly than they had since the accident, Maxwell felt a shift in their relationship, a new connection forming that hadn't been there before. and somewhere deep inside, he sensed his prosthetic legs becoming more truly a part of him, not just attachments, but extensions of his own body. That night, in the privacy of his room, Maxwell stood without his crutches and took 3 careful steps before his balance faltered. It wasn't running, not even close, but it was progress. Progress that had begun when a shoeless girl with a too big dress and a heart full of wisdom had looked at his metal legs and called them superhero legs. "Thank you," he whispered to his prosthetics as Mrs. Rodriguez helped him prepare for bed. "We're going to run together soon. I believe in us." 3 weeks passed in a blur of daily exercises, science project work, and growing friendship. Maxwell and Lily had fallen into a routine. Each day at recess, they would find a quiet spot where Maxwell could practice Lily's unusual techniques for connecting with his prosthetic legs. After school, they would often work on their science project, either at Maxwell's home or occasionally at Lily's small apartment when Eleanor wasn't working. Richard Wilson had surprised everyone, including himself, by taking a personal interest in the children's project. He'd provided them with miniature hydraulic components and simplified neural sensors to create a working model of how Maxwell's advanced prosthetics functioned. More surprisingly, he had begun spending time with Eleanor Carter, initially under the premise of discussing the children's friendship, but increasingly because he found her perspective refreshing after years of being surrounded by tech executives and yes men. Today was the day of the science fair, and Maxwell woke with a mixture of excitement and nervousness fluttering in his stomach. Over the past weeks, his mobility had improved dramatically. What had begun as a few tentative steps without crutches had progressed to walking confidently across a room, and just yesterday he had managed a slow jog of 5 steps before losing his balance, a milestone that had brought tears to Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes. "You look dapper this morning," Richard commented as Maxwell entered the kitchen, dressed in his school uniform with his hair neatly combed. Maxwell was walking with just 1 crutch now, a safety measure rather than a necessity. "Thanks, Dad," Maxwell beamed. "Today's the big day. Lily and I are going to show everyone how my legs work." Richard sipped his coffee, watching his son with pride. "You've come so far in such a short time. Your physical therapists are amazed by your progress." "It's because of Lily," Maxwell said matter-of-factly. "She showed me how to trust my legs." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "There's certainly something special about that young lady. Which reminds me," he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I have something for you to give Lily today. A thank-you gift for all she's done." Maxwell opened the box curiously to find a delicate silver bracelet with a small running figure charm. "Dad, it's perfect. She'll love it." "I thought so too," Richard smiled. "Now I've arranged to leave work early so I can attend the science fair this afternoon. Eleanor will be there as well. She managed to get the day off." Maxwell's eyes widened. "You're coming? Really?" "I wouldn't miss it," Richard assured him, ruffling his son's hair affectionately. "This is important to you, which makes it important to me." When they arrived at school, Lily was already waiting by their display table in the gymnasium, making last-minute adjustments to their project. She wore her yellow dress, now her special occasions outfit, and her face lit up when she spotted Maxwell. "You're only using 1 crutch today," she exclaimed. "That's amazing." Maxwell grinned, making his way to the table. "I might try without it during our presentation, if I feel ready." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Are your legs ready for that?" "I think so," Maxwell nodded. "We've been practicing a lot." Their project stood ready on the table, a detailed model of a prosthetic leg with working hydraulics and a simple neural interface demonstration. Alongside it was a poster explaining how the technology worked and how the human body adapted to it over time. "I added our special section," Lily whispered, pointing to a portion of the poster titled The Mind-Body Prosthetic Connection. I wrote about making friends with your legs, but I made it sound more scientific. Maxwell read the section, impressed by how Lily had translated her intuitive understanding into language that sounded technical enough for a science fair. This is great, he said sincerely. It explains everything perfectly. As other students began arriving with their projects, Ms. Bennett circulated among the tables, checking that everyone was prepared. When she reached Maxwell and Lily, she studied their display with evident admiration. "This is quite sophisticated," she remarked. "Did you have help with the mechanical components?" "My dad provided some parts," Maxwell explained, "but Lily and I designed and built the model ourselves, and we wrote all the explanations." Miss Bennett nodded approvingly. "Well, it's impressive work. The judges will begin their rounds in about an hour, so you have time for any final preparations." As she moved on to the next table, Tanner Green sauntered over, his curiosity seemingly overcoming his usual nastiness. "Did your dad's engineers build this for you?" he asked, examining the model with reluctant interest. Before Maxwell could respond defensively, Lily stepped in with her usual directness. "No, we built it. Would you like us to explain how it works?" Tanner seemed taken aback by the friendly offer. Sure, I guess." For the next 10 minutes, Maxwell and Lily took turns explaining their project to Tanner, who gradually dropped his hostile demeanor and began asking genuine questions. By the time he left to return to his own project, a rather simple volcano model, the dynamic between the three children had subtly shifted. "Why were you so nice to him?" Maxwell asked once Tanner was out of earshot. "He's always mean to us." Lily shrugged. "Grandma says people who are hurting often hurt others. Maybe Tanner needs friends too." The gymnasium gradually filled with students, teachers, and parents as the science fair officially began. Maxwell spotted his father arriving, deep in conversation with Eleanor Carter, who had managed to attend despite her challenging work schedule. The sight of them together, the billionaire tech CEO and the hospital custodian talking as comfortable equals, made Maxwell smile. When the judges reached their table, Maxwell felt a surge of nervousness, but Lily squeezed his hand reassuringly. Taking a deep breath, he set his crutch aside and stood unassisted before the panel of evaluators, 3 teachers and a guest scientist from a local university. "Good afternoon," Maxwell began with newfound confidence. "Our project demonstrates the integration of prosthetic technology with the human body, using my own experience as a case study." For the next 15 minutes, Maxwell and Lily presented their project flawlessly, taking turns explaining different aspects of the technology and the adaptation process. Maxwell demonstrated the model's functioning parts while standing steadily on his prosthetic legs without support, a feat that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. "And perhaps most importantly," Lily concluded, "we've discovered that successful adaptation isn't just physical, but requires a mental and emotional connection." Maxwell had to learn to trust his new legs and see them as part of himself, not just tools attached to his body. The lead judge, Dr. Harrison from the university, nodded thoughtfully. "That's a sophisticated insight for children your age. The mind-body connection is indeed a crucial factor in prosthetic adaptation, one that many adult researchers overlook." After the judges moved on, Richard and Eleanor approached the table, both beaming with pride. "That was remarkable," Richard said, embracing his son. "You stood the entire time without support. And your explanation was so clear and confident," Eleanor added, hugging Lily. "Both of you should be very proud." As the 4 of them celebrated together, Maxwell remembered the gift in his pocket. "Oh, Lily, I have something for you." He pulled out the velvet box and handed it to her. "To say thank you for helping me learn to run again." Lily opened the box and gasped at the silver bracelet inside. "It's beautiful," she whispered, carefully lifting it from its cushion. "Is that a running person?" "Yes," Maxwell nodded, "because that's what you helped me remember I can do." As Richard helped fasten the bracelet around Lily's wrist, Maxwell noticed tears in Eleanor's eyes. "Are those happy tears, Miss Eleanor?" he asked, remembering what Lily had said about her grandmother's reaction to the dress. Eleanor nodded, wiping her eyes. "Very happy tears, Maxwell. You two have taught us all something important." Indeed, the rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations with other students and parents. By the time the judges announced the winners, Maxwell was exhausted but exhilarated. When their names were called for first place in their division, he and Lily exchanged a look of pure joy before making their way to the stage. Maxwell walking entirely unassisted, taking slow but steady steps. Later, as the science fair wound down and families began to disperse, Richard approached Eleanor with a proposition that had been forming in his mind for weeks. "Eleanor," he began somewhat hesitantly, "I've been thinking about Lily's extraordinary gifts and your difficult circumstances. I'd like to propose something that might benefit all of us." He explained his idea: a position for Eleanor at Neurotech Industries, working with the patient adaptation team, using her holistic healing knowledge to help prosthetic users connect with their devices. The role would come with comprehensive benefits, a significant salary increase, and a company apartment in a safe neighborhood close to the school. Eleanor listened with widening eyes. "Mr. Wilson, Richard, that's incredibly generous, but I don't have the qualifications for such a position. I've been a custodian my entire working life." "You have the most important qualification," Richard insisted. "You raised Lily with a wisdom that our most educated scientists lack. That perspective is invaluable to our work." He hesitated, then added more softly, "And selfishly, I'd like Lily to remain in Maxwell's life. She's brought something back to him and to me that I thought was lost forever." As the adults continued their conversation, Maxwell and Lily sat together on a bench outside the gymnasium, admiring her new bracelet in the afternoon sunlight. "I have a secret to tell you," Maxwell said, his voice low with excitement. "This morning, before anyone was awake, I ran all the way down the hallway in our house, not walking fast, but actually running." Lily's face lit up. "You did it! I knew you could." "It was because of what you taught me," Maxwell said earnestly, "about making friends with my legs and trusting them." Lily smiled, a wisdom beyond her years shining in her eyes. "No, Maxwell, your legs were always ready to run. You just needed to remember that you were." As they sat together, two children from vastly different worlds who had somehow found exactly what they each needed in the other, neither could have imagined how their friendship would continue to transform not only their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them, and eventually, through Richard's company and Eleanor's wisdom, the lives of thousands of prosthetic users around the world. For now, though, they were simply two friends on the cusp of a new beginning. Maxwell with his newfound ability to run, and Lily with the security and opportunities she had never known before. The road ahead would have its challenges, but together they had already overcome what had seemed impossible just a month earlier. Tomorrow, Maxwell would run on the beach where he and his mother had once raced, his father watching with tears and joy. And Lily would be there beside him, running barefoot in the sand, showing him that some losses can never be replaced, but new joys can still be found if you're brave enough to keep moving forward. Summer arrived in a blaze of golden sunshine, transforming San Francisco into a playground of warmth and possibility. 3 months had passed since the science fair, bringing changes that none of them could have imagined. On that fateful day, Maxwell Wilson first met Lily Carter on the school playground. Eleanor Carter now worked as the Director of Holistic Integration at Neurotech Industries, her natural wisdom and compassionate approach revolutionizing how patients adapted to their prosthetics. She and Lily had moved into a comfortable company apartment just 10 minutes from Westfield Academy, a far cry from their previous cramped quarters. Maxwell had progressed from those first tentative running steps to sprinting across the beach with growing confidence. His physical therapists had documented his remarkable progress, creating a case study that was gaining attention in medical circles, a perfect blend of cutting-edge technology and Lily's intuitive methodology. Today was a special day, Maxwell's 7th birthday. Richard Wilson had arranged a celebration at their beach house in Malibu, a more intimate gathering than the elaborate parties they'd hosted before the accident. The guest list included Lily and Eleanor, Maxwell's medical team, and a few close friends from school, including, surprisingly, Tanner Green, whose relationship with Maxwell had gradually evolved from bullying to a tentative friendship. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Richard asked Maxwell as they stood on the deck, overlooking the private beach below. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone." Maxwell adjusted the special wetsuit designed to protect his prosthetics in water. "I'm sure, Dad. I've been practicing in the indoor pool for weeks. Besides, Lily will be with me." Richard nodded, his eyes reflecting both pride and lingering concern. Since the science fair, he'd witnessed his son transform from a withdrawn, grief-stricken child into a determined, joyful boy who refused to be limited by his prosthetics. But swimming in the ocean was a new challenge altogether. "There they are!" Maxwell pointed excitedly as a car pulled into the driveway. Moments later, Lily bounded up the steps to the deck, her curly hair now styled in 2 neat braids adorned with yellow ribbons that matched her dress. "Happy birthday!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around Maxwell in an exuberant hug. She stepped back and studied his wetsuit. "Are we really going swimming today?" Maxwell nodded, his eyes bright with excitement. "I want to show you and Dad what I've been practicing with Mrs. Rodriguez." Eleanor appeared behind Lily, exchanging a warm greeting with Richard. Their professional relationship had evolved into a deep friendship over the past months, bonded by their shared devotion to their respective children and the remarkable connection between them. "Maxwell has been very secretive about his swimming progress," Richard explained to Eleanor. "He wanted it to be a surprise for today." As other guests began arriving, Maxwell grew increasingly eager to demonstrate his new skills. Finally, when everyone had gathered on the beach, he took Lily's hand and led her to the water's edge. "Watch closely," he whispered to her with a grin. "I made friends with the water, just like you taught me with my legs." Odile. While the adults and other children observed from a respectful distance, Maxwell walked confidently into the gentle surf, his specialized prosthetics designed for both land and water use, moving smoothly through the shallow waves. When the water reached his waist, he turned back to wave at the onlookers, then dove forward in a clean, confident motion. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as Maxwell's arms cut through the water in a perfect freestyle stroke, his prosthetic legs kicking with surprising grace. He swam out about 30 feet, then turned and swam parallel to the shore before returning to where Lily stood watching with undisguised joy. "You did it!" she exclaimed as he emerged from the water. "You're swimming like a fish!" Maxwell laughed, shaking water from his hair. "Want to come in? The water's perfect." Without hesitation, Lily kicked off her sandals and waded in, still wearing her yellow dress. Maxwell taught her how to float on her back, supporting her gently as she got used to the sensation of weightlessness. From the shore, Richard and Eleanor watched their children with matching expressions of wonder. "Sometimes I think Lily is some kind of miracle," Richard said quietly. "The specialists had said it would be at least another year before Maxwell could attempt swimming independently." Eleanor smiled. "Lily has always had a gift for seeing beyond limitations. After her parents died, when most adults were treating her like she might break, she told me, 'Grandma, I'm still whole on the inside.' I think she sees that wholeness in Maxwell too." The birthday celebration continued into the evening. with a barbecue on the beach and a cake shaped like a racing track, complete with a fondant figure of a runner crossing the finish line. As twilight descended, Richard called for everyone's attention. "Before we lose the light," he announced, "I have a special gift for the birthday boy." Two assistants carried a large package onto the beach. Maxwell unwrapped it eagerly to reveal a custom-designed racing blade, a specialized prosthetic specifically for running. "These are the same type used by Paralympic athletes," Richard explained as Maxwell examined the curved carbon fiber blades with awe. "Your progress has been so remarkable that your medical team agreed you're ready for them." Maxwell looked up at his father with shining eyes, then turned to find Lily in the small crowd. "Did you know about this?" he asked her. Lily nodded, unable to contain her smile. "I helped pick the color," she admitted, pointing to the metallic blue accents that matched Maxwell's eyes. "Can I try them now?" Maxwell asked eagerly. With help from his prosthetist, who had been specially invited for this moment, Maxwell was fitted with the racing blades. He stood cautiously, adjusting to the different feel and balance they provided. "They're bouncy," he observed with delight, taking a few experimental steps. "They're designed to store and release energy with each step," the prosthetist explained, "but take it slow at first. They require different techniques than your everyday prosthetics." Maxwell nodded impatiently, already feeling the urge to run. He looked at Lily, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Remember to trust them," she called out. "Tell them what you want to do." Several adults exchanged amused glances at this unusual advice, but Richard and Eleanor shared a knowing look. They had both witnessed the effectiveness of Lily's unconventional approach too many times to discount it. Maxwell closed his eyes briefly, his lips moving in silent communication with his new blades. Then, with a deep breath, he took off down the beach. The difference was immediately apparent. Where his regular prosthetics had allowed him to run with increasing confidence, these specialized blades seemed to propel him forward with each step. His strides lengthened, his speed increased, and his face transformed with pure exhilaration as he raced along the shoreline in the fading light. "He's flying!" Tanner breathed in awe. Any last vestiges of his former cruelty dissolved in the face of this inspiring sight. Maxwell ran until he was just a silhouette against the sunset, then turned and sprinted back, his laughter carrying across the beach. When he finally skidded to a stop in front of the assembled group, his chest heaving with exertion and joy, there wasn't a dry eye among the adults. "That was awesome!" he exclaimed, his face flushed with excitement. "Did you see how fast I went? It felt like I was barely touching the ground." Richard knelt and embraced his son, his voice thick with emotion. "You were magnificent, Max, truly magnificent." As the party wound down and guests began to depart, Maxwell and Lily sat together at the edge of the deck, watching the last colors of sunset fade from the sky. The new racing blades lay beside them, already treasured. "Thank you," Maxwell said softly, "not just for helping me run again, but for being my friend when I needed one most." Lily smiled, the silver bracelet with the running charm catching the last light of day. "That's what friends do. They help each other fly when they've forgotten they have wings." Autumn painted the trees of Golden Gate Park in brilliant hues of red and gold, as Maxwell and Lily raced along the winding paths, their laughter floating on the crisp October air. Maxwell wore his racing blades, now a common sight whenever the two children played outside, while Lily ran barefoot despite the cooler weather, claiming she could feel the Earth's energy better without shoes. "I win!" Lily declared as she touched the designated finish line tree, a massive oak that had become their favorite meeting spot in the park. Maxwell arrived seconds later, slightly winded but grinning. "You're getting faster," he acknowledged. "Or maybe I'm letting you win because it's your birthday." Lily laughed, knowing full well he had done no such thing. At 8 years old, she remained small for her age, but had developed surprising speed and agility. Race back to the bench. Grandma and your dad should be there with the picnic by now. They took off again, zigzagging between fallen leaves and jumping over exposed roots. Anyone observing would never guess that just a year ago, Maxwell had been unable to walk unassisted, let alone race through the park on specialized running blades. Richard and Eleanor waited at a picnic table near the park's botanical garden, an elaborate lunch spread before them. Their friendship had deepened over the past year, evolving into something neither of them had anticipated. Richard found in Eleanor a grounding presence that reminded him of Jennifer's practical compassion, while Eleanor appreciated Richard's genuine respect for her wisdom despite their vastly different backgrounds. "Here they come," Eleanor observed, as the children appeared on the path running at full speed. "Sometimes I still can't believe how far Maxwell has come." Richard nodded, his expression soft as he watched his son. "The medical community can't either. The case study on his recovery has been accepted by 3 major journals. His progress has outpaced every projection." "Look at them," Eleanor said with a smile. "Just children running in the park, as it should be." "Happy birthday, Lily," Richard called as the children approached. He'd arranged for a small cake to be delivered, decorated with yellow sunflowers to match the theme of the day. Maxwell reached into his pocket and pulled out a small gift box wrapped in yellow paper. "I picked this out myself," he told Lily proudly as he handed it to her. Inside was a delicate compass pendant on a silver chain, the needle gleaming as it pointed steadfastly north. "It's beautiful," Lily breathed, examining it closely. "But why a compass?" "Because you helped me find my way when I was lost," Maxwell explained simply. "Now you'll always find your way too." As Eleanor helped Lily fasten the necklace, Richard's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He checked the screen and frowned slightly. "I need to take this. It's the Tokyo office," he apologized, stepping away from the table. The children were too engaged with the picnic to notice Richard's concerned expression as he spoke in hushed tones, but Eleanor observed the subtle shift in his demeanor when he returned. "Is everything all right?" she asked quietly, while the children were distracted with the cake. Richard hesitated. "A minor setback with the neural interface trials in Japan. Nothing serious, but I may need to fly out there next week." He glanced at Maxwell, who was laughing as Lily told an animated story. "I hate to leave when things are going so well here." "He's stronger now," Eleanor reminded him gently. "A short separation won't undo his progress." Richard nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his eyes. "You're right, of course, and Mrs. Rodriguez will be with him as always." The remainder of the picnic passed in cheerful celebration, with games and stories, and Lily opening the few simple gifts Eleanor had been able to provide. Though their financial situation had improved dramatically with Eleanor's position at Neurotech, she maintained her pragmatic approach to material possessions, preferring to focus on experiences rather than things. As they packed up to leave, Maxwell asked, "Can Lily sleep over tonight? We could watch movies and make popcorn." "Not tonight, sweetie," Eleanor replied. "We have church in the morning, and then Lily has her community choir performance." "But next weekend would work," Richard suggested, noticing Maxwell's disappointment. "In fact, why don't both of you come stay at the house? I'll be in Tokyo, but Mrs. Rodriguez will be there, and I know she'd enjoy the company." The children's faces lit up at this suggestion, and plans were made for a weekend sleepover. As they parted ways, Richard and Maxwell heading to their waiting Tesla, while Eleanor and Lily walked toward the bus stop, none of them could have anticipated how a simple business trip would set in motion events that would test their newfound strength in unexpected ways. The following Wednesday, Richard departed for Tokyo, leaving Maxwell in the capable hands of Mrs. Rodriguez. The first few days passed uneventfully, with Maxwell attending school and maintaining his regular physical therapy sessions. He missed his father, but looked forward to the upcoming sleepover with Lily and Eleanor. Friday afternoon found Maxwell waiting eagerly by the front window as Thomas drove Eleanor and Lily up the winding driveway to the Wilson estate. The weekend began joyfully, with swimming in the indoor pool, movie marathons with enormous bowls of popcorn, and late-night ghost stories that had all three of them laughing more than screaming. Saturday morning, however, brought an unexpected call from Richard. "The situation here is more complicated than I anticipated," he told Maxwell during their video chat. "I need to stay a few more days to oversee the recalibration of the neural response systems." Maxwell tried to hide his disappointment. "That's okay, Dad. I understand." Are you having fun with Lily and Mrs. Carter?" Richard asked, noting his son's subdued reaction. Maxwell brightened. "Yeah. We swam for hours yesterday, and today we're going to hike down to the beach if it doesn't rain." After saying goodbye, Maxwell found Lily and Eleanor in the kitchen, helping Mrs. Rodriguez prepare breakfast. "Dad has to stay in Tokyo longer," he announced, sliding onto a stool at the counter. Eleanor exchanged a glance with Mrs. Rodriguez. "I'm sorry to hear that, sweetheart. Is everything okay with his work?" Maxwell shrugged. Something about neural recalibration. He didn't sound worried, just busy. The day proceeded as planned, despite occasional rain showers, with the children adapting their beach hike to an indoor scavenger hunt designed by Mrs. Rodriguez throughout the massive house. By evening, however, a powerful storm had moved in, lashing the cliffside property with wind and rain. "I've never heard thunder so loud," Lily commented as they played board games in the main living room, flinching slightly as another boom rattled the windows. "The house is perfectly safe," Mrs. Rodriguez assured them. "It was built to withstand much worse than this." But shortly before midnight, as the storm reached its peak, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. "Stay calm, children," Mrs. Rodriguez's voice came through the blackness. "The emergency generator should kick in momentarily." When several minutes passed without the lights returning, Mrs. Rodriguez used her phone's flashlight to navigate to the utility room. Eleanor accompanied her, leaving Maxwell and Lily huddled together on the sofa. "I'm not scared," Lily declared, though her hand gripped Maxwell's tightly. "Grandma says darkness is just light taking a rest." "I'm not scared either," Maxwell insisted, though his heart was racing, "but I wish the generator would hurry up." When Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez returned, their expressions were tense, even in the dim light of their phone flashlights. "The backup generator isn't responding," Mrs. Rodriguez explained. "And the storm has taken down cell towers. We have very limited service." "Is it safe to stay here?" Eleanor asked, her practical nature asserting itself. "We're rather exposed on this cliffside." Mrs. Rodriguez considered this. "The house structure is sound, but without power, we have no heat, and the temperature will drop overnight. The road down to the main highway might already be flooded." "What about the beach house?" Maxwell suggested. "It's smaller, but it's not on the cliff." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "That might be our best option. It has its own generator and is more protected from the wind. The path down is steep, but if we're careful." The decision made, they quickly gathered essentials: flashlights, warm clothes, medications, and some food and water. The rain had momentarily lessened as they ventured outside, following the stone path that wound down the cliff toward the smaller beach house nestled in a protected cove below. Maxwell navigated the slick path with surprising confidence, his prosthetics finding secure footing even in the treacherous conditions. Lily stayed close beside him, while Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez followed with the emergency supplies. They had nearly reached the beach level when a terrifying sound cut through the storm's chaos, a deep, rumbling groan from the cliff face above them. "Mudslide!" Mrs. Rodriguez shouted. "Run!" The four figures broke into a sprint across the narrow strip of beach, racing toward the safety of the beach house just as a section of the saturated cliff gave way. Earth, rocks and vegetation cascaded down, narrowly missing them but blocking the path they had just descended. "Is everyone okay?" Eleanor asked breathlessly once they'd reached the shelter of the beach house's covered porch. "We're fine, Grandma," Lily assured her, though her voice trembled slightly. Mrs. Rodriguez quickly unlocked the beach house and ushered everyone inside. Unlike the main house, which was ultra-modern, the beach house had a cozy, cabin-like feel with its wood paneling and simple furnishings. Most importantly, when Mrs. Rodriguez flipped the power switch, the generator hummed to life and warm light flooded the space. "Thank goodness," she sighed. "Now let's get you children dried off and warm." As they changed into dry clothes and Mrs. Rodriguez prepared hot chocolate on the small gas stove, Maxwell tried calling his father but couldn't get a signal. "The landlines are probably down too," Mrs. Rodriguez said, noticing his concern. "But don't worry. Your father knows we would come to the beach house if there was any problem at the main house. We'll be able to contact him once the storm passes." Later, as the children finally drifted to sleep in the beach house's small second bedroom, Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez sat at the kitchen table, speaking in low voices. "That mudslide was much too close," Eleanor murmured, cradling her mug of tea. "If we'd been just a minute slower." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "The cliff has been showing signs of instability since the last rainy season. Mr. Wilson had engineers out to assess it, but the reinforcement work wasn't scheduled to begin until next month." Outside, the storm continued to rage, waves crashing against the shore with frightening force. Neither woman knew that by morning their situation would become far more precarious, or that the children's bond would face its greatest test yet. Dawn broke with deceptive calm after the night's tempest. The rain had stopped, though dark clouds still loomed on the horizon, promising more to come. Maxwell was the first to awaken, slipping quietly from the small bedroom where Lily still slept soundly. He found Mrs. Rodriguez and Eleanor in the kitchen, speaking in hushed, concerned tones that immediately silenced when he appeared. "What's wrong?" Maxwell asked, sensing their tension. The adults exchanged glances before Mrs. Rodriguez knelt to his level. "The storm caused more damage than we expected," she explained gently. "There's been a significant landslide that's blocked the road up to the main house." "Can't we just go around it?" Maxwell asked, glancing toward the windows that faced the beach. "It's not that simple, mijo," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "The beach path is gone too. The waves were so strong overnight that they've eroded a large section of the shoreline." Eleanor stepped forward. "What Mrs. Rodriguez is trying to say, Maxwell, is that we're temporarily cut off. We can't get back up to the main house, and the road that connects the beach house to the highway has also been damaged." Maxwell's eyes widened. "So we're stuck here? For how long?" "Just until emergency services can reach us," Mrs. Rodriguez assured him. "I managed to get a text through to the security team before we lost signal completely. They know we're here and safe." "Does my dad know?" Mrs. Rodriguez hesitated. "We haven't been able to reach him directly in Tokyo, but the company's security protocols mean he'll be notified about the situation." At that moment, Lily appeared in the doorway, her curly hair tousled from sleep. "What situation?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Maxwell turned to her. "We're trapped. The storm caused landslides, and we can't get back to the main house or to the road." Lily's expression remained remarkably calm. "Like an adventure? Robinson Crusoe was trapped on an island, and he was okay." Her simplistic optimism broke some of the tension, drawing reluctant smiles from the adults. "It is a bit like an adventure," Eleanor agreed, "but one that will end very soon when the emergency crews clear the roads." "In the meantime," Mrs. Rodriguez added practically, "we need to take inventory of our supplies. The beach house is stocked with emergency provisions, but we should be careful with what we use. Bro. The morning passed with the four of them cataloguing their resources. The beach house had been designed as a recreational space rather than a full-time residence, but its pantry contained enough non-perishable food for several days. The generator had fuel to last approximately 3 days if they were conservative with electricity, and the house had a rainwater collection system that provided basic water for washing, though they would need to boil it for drinking. By midday, the children's initial excitement about their adventure was wearing thin. The beach house, though charming, was small and without internet or television. Mrs. Rodriguez had insisted on conserving generator power. Entertainment options were limited. "Can we at least go outside?" Maxwell asked, peering through the windows at the temporarily clear skies. "Just on the deck, not near the water." After inspecting the wooden deck that wrapped around the beach house and finding it stable, Mrs. Rodriguez agreed they could spend some time outside under supervision. The view that greeted them was sobering. Where there had once been a gentle slope up to the main house, there was now a chaotic jumble of mud, rocks, and uprooted vegetation. The beach itself had been dramatically reshaped by the storm, with a section nearest the cliff completely submerged at high tide. "It's like a different place," Lily observed, gripping the deck railing as she surveyed the transformed landscape. Maxwell nodded, a knot forming in his stomach as he realized the seriousness of their situation. What if emergency services couldn't reach them quickly? What if another storm came before help arrived? As if reading his thoughts, Lily placed her hand over his on the railing. "We'll be okay," she said with quiet confidence. "Grandma says challenges are just opportunities wearing scary masks." Maxwell attempted a smile, though his worry remained. His father was halfway around the world, possibly not even aware of their predicament yet. And while he trusted Mrs. Rodriguez and Eleanor, he couldn't shake the feeling that their reassurances masked deeper concerns. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered again, and the adults ushered the children back inside just as the first heavy raindrops began to fall. This storm lacked the ferocious intensity of the previous night's tempest, but brought steady, persistent rain that drummed relentlessly on the beach house roof. "I wish Dad was here," Maxwell said quietly, as he and Lily played a board game found in one of the cabinets. "He'd know what to do." "The grown-ups do know what to do," Lily assured him, "and your dad will come as soon as he can. But he doesn't even know we're in trouble, and even if he did, he's in Tokyo. That's really far away." Lily considered this. "My parents are even farther away, but I still feel them helping me sometimes," she said thoughtfully. "Maybe your dad can feel that you need him, even across the ocean." Maxwell wasn't sure he believed in that kind of connection, but he found Lily's unwavering faith comforting nonetheless. That evening, as Mrs. Rodriguez prepared a simple meal from their supplies, Eleanor noticed Maxwell staring intently at his prosthetic legs, which he had removed while resting on the sofa. "Is everything all right with your legs, Maxwell?" she asked, sitting beside him. "I was just thinking," he replied slowly, "if we have to walk out of here because no one comes for us, will my regular prosthetics be better than my running blades? The terrain is really rough now." Eleanor was struck by the maturity of his question, this 7-year-old boy calmly analyzing survival logistics. "That's very thoughtful planning," she said, "but we won't need to make that decision. Help will come long before we need to consider such measures." Maxwell nodded, though Eleanor sensed he wasn't entirely convinced. After dinner, with the storm intensifying again outside, Mrs. Rodriguez suggested they conserve the generator by using it only when absolutely necessary. They switched to battery-operated lanterns, creating a warm, golden glow throughout the small house that made their situation feel almost cozy. "Let's tell stories," Lily proposed as they gathered in the living room. "Scary ones, but not too scary." "Beep." What followed was an impromptu storytelling session that revealed much about each of them. Mrs. Rodriguez shared folklore from her childhood in Mexico about benevolent spirits that protected lost children. Eleanor told gentler versions of the Appalachian tales she'd grown up with in rural Kentucky before moving to California as a young woman. The children contributed imaginative adventures featuring brave explorers and unexpected allies. As the evening wore on, Maxwell found himself relaxing despite the storm raging outside. There was something powerful about being together in this small, warm space, creating a bubble of safety through nothing more than words and presence. When the children finally began to tire, Mrs. Rodriguez suggested they all sleep in the main room rather than separating. "It will be warmer this way," she explained, though Maxwell suspected she wanted to keep everyone close in case of emergency. They arranged blankets and pillows across the floor and sofa, creating a makeshift communal sleeping area. As they settled in, the wind howled around the beach house's sturdy frame, a haunting reminder of their vulnerability. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Maxwell asked suddenly, "what if the water rises and reaches the house?" The question hung in the darkness, giving voice to the fear they'd all been carefully avoiding. "The beach house was built on elevated ground precisely to prevent flooding," she answered calmly. "Many storms have come and gone since it was built, and it has always remained dry." "But this storm is really bad," Maxwell persisted. "Maybe worse than the ones before." There was a moment of silence before Eleanor spoke. "Maxwell, do you remember what Lily taught you about trusting your prosthetic legs? How you needed to believe in them for them to work properly?" "Yes," Maxwell replied, unsure where she was going with this. "Well, sometimes life is like that too. When challenges come, we need to trust that we have what we need to face them, whether that's strong legs, a safe shelter, or people who care about us." "But what if we don't?" Maxwell asked, the question emerging from his deepest fears. It was Lily who answered, her small voice unwavering in the darkness. "Then we become what we need. Remember how you couldn't run, but then you learned how. Sometimes the storm comes first, and then we discover we're stronger than we knew." The profound simplicity of her response settled over the room, bringing with it a measure of peace that eventually lulled them all to sleep despite the tempest outside. They couldn't have known that in Tokyo, Richard Wilson had just received the emergency alert about the situation at his coastal property. Nor could they have anticipated that he would immediately charter a private jet to return to San Francisco, driven by a fear he hadn't felt since the accident that had taken Jennifer and Maxwell's legs. The fear of losing what he loved most while an ocean away. As dawn approached, the storm finally began to subside, but their ordeal was far from over. The real test of everything Maxwell and Lily had learned about courage, trust, and friendship was about to begin. The third day of their isolation dawned clear, but revealed new challenges. The second storm had caused additional damage, with sections of the beach now completely underwater at high tide. More concerning was the state of the beach house's foundation. Mrs. Rodriguez discovered hairline cracks in the concrete supports that hadn't been there the previous day. "The structure is still sound," she assured everyone after a careful inspection, "but we shouldn't remain here longer than necessary." Eleanor nodded grimly. "Have you had any success with communications?" Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. "Cell service is still down, and the emergency radio is only picking up static. But search and rescue operations must be underway by now. This storm affected the entire coastline." The children listened to this exchange with growing unease. Despite the adults' efforts to maintain a calm facade, it was becoming clear that their situation was precarious. "I heard you talking about the foundation," Maxwell said bluntly. "Is the house going to fall down?" Mrs. Rodriguez knelt to his level, No, mijo, the cracks are concerning, but not immediately dangerous. However, it would be best if we're rescued sooner rather than later. What if they don't know exactly where we are? Lily asked. The landslide changed everything. What if they're looking in the wrong place? It was a perceptive question that had already occurred to both adults. The Wilson property was extensive, and with the landscape dramatically altered by the storms, pinpointing their location might prove challenging for rescue teams unfamiliar with the terrain. "We need to signal our location," Eleanor said decisively. "Something visible from both land and air." What followed was a creative problem-solving session that engaged all four of them. The beach house had limited supplies, but by combining colorful beach towels, reflective cooking pans, and the emergency flares from the supply kit, they created several attention-grabbing signals. These were strategically placed on the deck and the small section of beach that remained above water. "Now we wait," Mrs. Rodriguez said as they surveyed their handiwork. "But not passively. We should prepare in case we need to leave quickly." Okay, they spent the morning organizing essential supplies into backpacks, each person responsible for carrying what they could. Maxwell was particularly methodical, carefully packing his medically necessary items and both sets of prosthetics. "Why are you bringing both?" Lily asked, watching him wrap his running blades in a protective cloth. "Because we might need to move fast across different terrain," he explained. "My regular legs are better for climbing, but the blades are faster on flat ground." Lily nodded, impressed by his practical thinking. "You've changed a lot since we first met," she observed. "You're braver now." Maxwell considered this. "I don't feel brave. I'm actually pretty scared." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Lily said with the simple wisdom that continually surprised those around her. "It just means you do what needs doing anyway." By midday, the tide had risen again, now reaching alarmingly close to the beach house's elevated foundation. The four of them gathered on the deck, watching the water's inexorable approach with growing concern. "If it continues at this rate," Eleanor said quietly to Mrs. Rodriguez, "we may need to consider evacuating to higher ground, dangerous as that might be." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "The cliffside is unstable, but there's a path to the east that might still be passable. We should scout it while there's still daylight." They were debating who should go when Maxwell suddenly pointed toward the horizon. "Listen, do you hear that?" At first, there was only the sound of waves, but then it became clear, the distant but unmistakable thrum of helicopter rotors. "They've found us!" Mrs. Rodriguez exclaimed, hurrying to retrieve a signaling mirror from their emergency kit. The helicopter appeared minutes later, circling once over the transformed landscape before hovering near their location. Relief washed over them as they realized rescue was finally at hand, until the helicopter veered away without attempting to land. "Why are they leaving?" Maxwell cried, panic edging his voice. "They're not abandoning us," Mrs. Rodriguez assured him. "They're likely assessing the situation. There's nowhere safe to land nearby." Indeed, the helicopter returned shortly, this time dropping a package that landed with precision on the small remaining section of dry beach. Mrs. Rodriguez retrieved it quickly, finding emergency supplies, a radio, and instructions inside. Using the radio, she established contact with the rescue team. Their situation was worse than they had realized. The coastal road had been completely washed out for miles in both directions, making ground rescue impossible. The helicopter couldn't land due to the unstable terrain, and with another storm system approaching, air operations would soon be suspended. "They're sending a Coast Guard vessel," Mrs. Rodriguez explained after a lengthy radio exchange. "It will anchor offshore, and will be extracted by inflatable boat. But we need to move quickly. They can only approach during the brief window between tides." The news was both relief and new anxiety. Water rescue meant navigating the increasingly rough surf, a daunting prospect especially for Maxwell with his prosthetics. "I can swim," he said immediately, reading the concern in Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes. "I've been practicing for months. This isn't like swimming in a pool or even from the beach on a calm day," she cautioned. "The currents are dangerous. And your prosthetics—" "I'll take them off," Maxwell interrupted. "I can swim better without them anyway." Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez exchanged worried glances. Without his prosthetics, Maxwell would be entirely dependent on others to move across the unstable beach terrain to reach the water. It was Lily who offered the solution. "We'll help each other," she said firmly. "Maxwell can use his running blades to get to the water's edge because they're lightest, then take them off for swimming. I'll stay right beside him the whole time." Her confidence was infectious, and with no better options available, they began preparing for the evacuation. The Coast Guard vessel appeared on the horizon an hour later, anchoring at the safest possible distance from shore. A smaller inflatable craft was deployed, maneuvering carefully toward them through the churning water. As final preparations were made, a new sound reached them, not from the sea, but from above. A second helicopter appeared, this one smaller than the rescue craft and bearing the Neuratech Industries logo. "Dad!" Maxwell exclaimed, instantly recognizing his father's private helicopter. He came back from Tokyo. The corporate helicopter couldn't land either, but circled overhead as if providing witness and reassurance. Knowing his father was present gave Maxwell a surge of determination as they prepared to make their way to the water's edge. The evacuation plan was meticulously coordinated via radio. Maxwell would switch to his running blades for the journey across the unstable beach, with Lily staying beside him while Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez carried essential supplies. Upon reaching the water, Maxwell would remove his prosthetics, which would be secured in waterproof bags. The adults would help Maxwell into the inflatable craft first, followed by Lily, then Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez. As they stepped from the relative safety of the beach house onto the unstable ground, Maxwell felt a surge of fear that threatened to overwhelm him. The terrain was far more treacherous than it had appeared from the deck, shifting sand interspersed with debris from the landslide, all while waves crashed ever closer. "Remember what you taught me," Lily said, gripping his hand. "Trust your legs. They know what to do." Maxwell nodded, taking a deep breath. "We go together, okay? Don't let go of my hand." "I won't," Lily promised. "Not ever." With careful, deliberate steps, they began making their way toward the water, where the Coast Guard team waited in their inflatable craft. Every step required concentration, with Maxwell's running blades finding purchase in the unstable surface, while Lily matched his pace perfectly. They had nearly reached the water when disaster struck. A larger-than-expected wave surged up the beach, undermining a section of ground just ahead of them. The sand shifted suddenly beneath Maxwell's right blade, throwing him off balance. As he stumbled, Lily's grip on his hand was broken, and to his horror, he watched her slide toward the retreating wave. "Lily!" he screamed, lunging forward despite the treacherous footing. In that moment, everything Lily had taught him coalesced into pure instinct. Without conscious thought, Maxwell found himself moving with unprecedented coordination on his running blades, navigating the shifting sand with perfect balance as he raced toward his friend. Lily had managed to stop her slide by digging her hands into the sand, but another wave was approaching fast. Just as the water reached her, Maxwell grabbed her arm and pulled her back from the surf's powerful grasp, the two children tumbling onto more stable ground as the wave retreated. "Are you okay?" Maxwell gasped, his heart pounding. Lily nodded, sand covering her face but eyes wide with amazement. "You saved me! You ran on the sand like it was nothing." There was no time to process this achievement. The Coast Guard team had witnessed the near disaster and was now shouting instructions through a megaphone, directing them to move quickly to a different extraction point where the beach was more stable. with renewed determination, and Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez now at their sides, they carefully made their way to the new location. When they finally reached the water's edge, Maxwell sat to remove his running blades, hands shaking from both exertion and leftover adrenaline. "You were amazing," Lily whispered, as Mrs. Rodriguez secured the prosthetics in a waterproof bag. "You didn't even have to think about it. You just did it." Maxwell realized she was right. In that crucial moment, there had been no conscious communication with his prosthetics, no careful planning of each step, just pure, instinctive movement driven by the need to reach Lily. Somehow, in the most extreme circumstance, he and his artificial limbs had achieved perfect harmony. The Coast Guard team skillfully brought their craft as close to shore as possible. Mrs. Rodriguez carried Maxwell into the water and handed him to the waiting rescuers, who lifted him safely aboard. Lily followed, then Eleanor, and finally Mrs. Rodriguez herself. As the craft pulled away from the endangered beach house, Maxwell looked up to see his father's helicopter still circling overhead. Somehow, despite being an ocean away, Richard had sensed the danger and returned just when Maxwell needed him most. A different kind of connection that defied logical explanation. The rescue craft navigated the choppy waters with expert precision, delivering them safely to the larger Coast Guard vessel where medical personnel waited to check them for injuries. As they were brought aboard, a Coast Guard officer approached with news. "There's someone very anxious to see you," she told Maxwell with a smile, gesturing toward the bridge. Minutes later, Maxwell found himself wrapped in his father's fierce embrace, both of them too overcome for words. When Richard finally pulled back to look at his son, his eyes were wet with tears. "I felt it," Richard said hoarsely. "In Tokyo, I woke up in the middle of the night with the certainty that you were in danger. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I had to get back immediately." Maxwell thought of Lily's words about connections that transcended distance and understanding. Perhaps there was more to her wisdom than he had realized. As the Coast Guard vessel set course for San Francisco harbor, Maxwell and Lily stood at the railing, watching their temporary island prison recede into the distance. Just visible through the gathering mist was the beach house, waves now lapping at its foundation, a stark reminder of how close their call had truly been. "We made it," Lily said softly, her hand finding Maxwell's again. Maxwell nodded, feeling a profound shift within himself, a new understanding of strength, connection, and what it meant to truly trust. The lessons Lily had taught him about his prosthetic legs had proven to be lessons about life itself, revealed in the crucible of genuine danger. "We made it together," he replied, squeezing her hand, "just like always." Richard Wilson stood at the edge of the excavated construction site, watching as workers poured the foundation for what would become the Lily Carter Center for Adaptive Technology. In the 6 months since the coastal rescue, his life had transformed in ways he never could have anticipated. "The engineers say we'll still make the spring opening date despite the rain delays," Eleanor informed him as she joined him at the site's edge, clipboard in hand. As Director of Patient Integration at Neurotech, she now oversaw the human element of all the company's initiatives, bringing her natural wisdom to the cutting-edge technology Richard's company produced. "Maxwell will be disappointed if we have to postpone the opening," Richard replied with a smile. "He's already rehearsing his speech." Eleanor laughed. "Lily, too. She's decided to recite a poem she wrote instead of a traditional speech. Something about metal wings and human hearts." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Thomas, driving the children from school. Maxwell and Lily burst from the car with their usual exuberance, racing toward the adults with matching grins. At 8 years old, Maxwell had become astonishingly proficient with his prosthetics, switching between his everyday legs and running blades with ease, depending on the activity. "Dad, Miss Eleanor, look what we got!" Maxwell waved a glossy magazine in the air as they approached. Richard accepted the magazine, a leading science publication for young readers, and found it opened to a feature article titled "Young Innovators, the Children Revolutionizing Prosthetic Adaptation." A photograph showed Maxwell and Lily standing proudly beside their science fair project from the previous year, now developed into an actual therapeutic protocol being implemented at hospitals nationwide. "Your project made it into Science Kids magazine," Richard exclaimed, genuine pride in his voice. "That's extraordinary." "And turn to page 23, Lily urged, practically bouncing with excitement. "There's more." On the indicated page was an announcement of the Young Innovator of the Year award, with Maxwell and Lily named as the youngest ever recipients. The award ceremony would take place in Washington, D.C. the following month. "This is incredible," Eleanor breathed, reading the details. "They want you both to present your methodology to a national audience of medical professionals and engineers." "Can we go?" Maxwell asked eagerly. "Please?" "Of course we'll go," Richard assured him, already mentally rearranging his schedule to accommodate the trip. Since the rescue, he had made a conscious decision to prioritize Maxwell above all else, including his company. The near tragedy had crystallized what truly mattered in his life. "The center looks bigger than in the pictures," Lily observed, turning her attention to the construction site spread before them. "It's growing every day," Richard confirmed, "just like the two of you." The Lily Carter Center represented Richard's most personally meaningful project, a facility dedicated to helping children with prosthetics learn to adapt using both cutting-edge technology and the holistic, intuitive approach that had worked so miraculously for Maxwell. It would combine Neurotech's most advanced neural interfaces with training programs designed by Eleanor, all housed in a building specifically engineered to feel welcoming to children. "Mrs. Rodriguez is waiting at home with a surprise," Richard told the children, "something to celebrate your magazine feature." This announcement was met with cheers, and soon they were headed back to the Wilson estate, which had been extensively renovated after the storms. The cliff face had been professionally stabilized, and while the beach house had ultimately been lost to erosion, a new, more secure structure was being built further from the water's edge. More significant than the physical changes to the property were the changes to the household itself. Eleanor and Lily had moved into the East Wing, initially as temporary guests while their apartment building underwent repairs, but the arrangement had gradually become permanent. Richard and Eleanor's professional partnership had evolved into something deeper. Not quite romance, but a profound connection based on shared values and complementary strengths. At the house, Mrs. Rodriguez had prepared a celebration dinner, complete with a cake decorated to look like the magazine cover, featuring Maxwell and Lily. As they enjoyed the feast, Maxwell found himself reflecting on how much had changed since that first day on the playground when a shoeless girl had told him his prosthetic legs looked like superhero legs. "What are you thinking about?" Lily asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "Remember when you first said I could run again?" "I didn't believe you," Lily smiled, "and now you're faster than most kids with natural legs." "It wasn't really about running, though, was it?" Maxwell said thoughtfully. "It was about believing I could." Lily's expression turned serious. "That's always the hardest part. The legs can't do anything until the heart decides it's possible." Their conversation was interrupted by the doorbell, announcing the arrival of unexpected visitors. Maxwell's medical team, including his surgeons, physical therapists, and prosthetist. They had come bearing news too significant to share over the phone. "We've been monitoring Maxwell's progress for over a year now, Dr. Abernathy explained once everyone was seated in the living room. "His adaptation rate is unprecedented, particularly the neural integration with the prosthetic systems." "What exactly does that mean?" Richard asked, sensing there was more to this visit than mere progress updates. Dr. Chen, the neural specialist, stepped forward. We believe Maxwell is an ideal candidate for the new biodynamic prosthetics currently in development at Johns Hopkins. These aren't just mechanical replacements. They actually interface directly with the nervous system to provide sensory feedback. You mean? Richard began, hardly daring to hope. Yes, Dr. Chen confirmed. With these new prosthetics, Maxwell would not only have greater control over movement, but would actually be able to feel with them. Pressure, texture, temperature. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For Maxwell, who had accepted the permanence of his condition with remarkable resilience, the possibility of regaining even partial sensation was overwhelming. Would it hurt? He asked finally, his voice small. The integration process requires several minor surgical procedures, Doctor. Abernathy explained gently, but the discomfort would be minimal and temporary. The potential benefits, however, are extraordinary. How soon could this happen? Eleanor asked, her practical nature focusing on logistics while the others were still processing the emotional impact. The research team at Johns Hopkins would like Maxwell to visit for evaluation next month. If he's confirmed as a candidate, the first procedure could be scheduled within 6 months. Richard looked at his son, seeing the complex mixture of hope and apprehension on his face. This is entirely your decision, Max, he said softly. There's no rush to decide. Maxwell turned to Lily, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the doctor's explanation. What do you think? He asked, trusting her intuition as he always did in matters of importance. Lily considered the question with the serious deliberation that made her seem far older than her 8 years. I think, she said slowly, that your legs have been trying to talk to you all along. Maybe now you'll be able to hear what they're saying. Her unique perspective drew smiles from the medical team, who had grown accustomed to Lily's unusual wisdom during Maxwell's regular checkups. We'll leave the information for you to review, Doctor. Abernathy said, placing a folder on the coffee table. Take all the time you need to consider it. After the medical team departed, the evening returned to its celebratory mood, though Maxwell remained thoughtful. Later, as the children prepared for bed, Richard found his son sitting on the deck overlooking the ocean, his prosthetics removed and placed carefully beside him. Heavy thoughts for a celebration night, Richard observed, sitting next to Maxwell. I was just thinking about everything that's happened, Maxwell replied. If I hadn't lost my legs, I wouldn't have met Lily. And if I hadn't met Lily, I might never have learned to run again. And now there's this new chance to maybe feel again. He looked up at his father. It's like everything connects, even the bad stuff. Richard was struck by his son's insight, so similar to what Jennifer would have said. Your mother used to talk about life that way, he said softly. She believed that nothing happens without purpose, even the painful things. Do you think she would want me to try these new legs? The ones that can feel? Richard considered the question carefully. I think she would want whatever gives you the fullest life possible. But more importantly, what do you want? Maxwell was silent for a long moment, his young face solemn in the moonlight. I want to try, he said finally. Not because I need to be fixed. My legs work great now. But because it feels like the next step in the journey, like my legs and I are still getting to know each other. Richard smiled at the echo of Lily's teachings in his son's words. Then we'll go to Johns Hopkins next month, after your award ceremony in Washington. Maxwell nodded, satisfied with the decision. Dad, do you ever think about what would have happened if Lily hadn't come to our school that day? The question gave Richard pause. His life now was unrecognizable from what it had been just 18 months ago. Not only Maxwell's remarkable progress, but his own healing from Jennifer's loss, his evolving relationship with Eleanor, and the fundamental shift in his company's focus toward more humanitarian applications of neural technology. "I try not to dwell on what-ifs," Richard answered truthfully, "but I'm profoundly grateful that she did." As if conjured by their conversation, Lily appeared at the deck doorway, wrapped in a robe and looking concerned. "Is everything okay? You both disappeared." "Everything's fine," Maxwell assured her, patting the space beside him in invitation. "We were just talking about the new legs that might help me feel things." "Have you decided?" Lily asked, settling next to him. "I want to try them," Maxwell confirmed, "but I'm a little scared too." Lily nodded, understanding. "That's okay. Being scared just means you're about to do something brave." As the three of them sat together under the stars, Richard was struck by how this small girl had transformed their lives with her simple wisdom and unwavering belief in possibilities others couldn't see. Whatever the future held, with new prosthetics, the opening of the center, or challenges yet unknown, Lily had taught them all to approach it with the courage to believe, not just in what was, but in what could be. Maxwell reached for his prosthetics, running his fingers along the sleek metal and carbon fiber that had become such an integral part of him. "Thank you," he whispered, to his legs, to Lily, to whatever forces had brought them together on that playground 18 months ago. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and possibilities. But for tonight, under the same stars that had witnessed their most harrowing moments during the storm, there was only gratitude for the journey that had led them here, and faith in whatever lay ahead. 5 years had passed since Maxwell Wilson had first met Lily Carter on that fateful playground. Now 12 years old and standing on the precipice of adolescence, Maxwell adjusted his tie nervously as he waited backstage at the International TED Conference. The audience beyond the curtain represented the global elite in medicine, technology, and education. Over 1,000 people waiting to hear from the young man whose journey had revolutionized prosthetic adaptation for children worldwide. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad," Lily teased, appearing beside him in her yellow dress, a new version of her childhood favorite, now an elegant garment appropriate for a poised 12-year-old. The silver bracelet with the running charm still adorned her wrist, joined now by other meaningful tokens from their shared journey, including a compass pendant that matched the one she had given him years ago. Maxwell grimaced. "I think I'd prefer the firing squad. At least it would be over quickly." "You've given this speech dozens of times," Lily reminded him, "and this audience already admires you. They wouldn't be here otherwise." "It's different this time," Maxwell insisted. "This isn't just about the Lily Carter Centers or the adaptation protocol. This is about the biodynamic system going global." The past 5 years had been transformative. Maxwell had indeed become the first pediatric recipient of the revolutionary biodynamic prosthetics, which enabled him to feel pressure, temperature, and texture through advanced neural integration. What had begun as an experimental treatment had evolved into a breakthrough technology, with Maxwell and Lily at the center of its development. The Lily Carter Center in San Francisco had been so successful that sister facilities had opened in 5 major cities across the United States, with international locations now under construction in London, Tokyo, and Mumbai. The centers combined Neurotech's cutting-edge technology with the holistic adaptation methodology that Lily had intuitively developed, a combination that had produced results far exceeding traditional approaches. 2 minutes, Mr. Wilson, a stage manager informed him, clipboard in hand. "Doctor, Carter asked me to tell you she's in the front row with your father." Maxwell nodded his thanks. Eleanor Carter had completed her doctorate in integrative therapy 2 years earlier, formalizing the wisdom she had always possessed and now shared with medical professionals worldwide. She and Richard had finally married the previous summer in a simple ceremony on the beach, with Maxwell and Lily serving as best man and maid of honor. "Are you ready?" Lily asked, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. Maxwell took a deep breath, centering himself the way she had taught him years ago. "Ready as I'll ever be." The stage lights were blinding as Maxwell walked out to enthusiastic applause. He moved with fluid confidence on his latest biodynamic prosthetics, which were visibly sleeker and more advanced than the versions he had received as a child. Taking his position at center stage, he waited for the audience to settle before beginning his address. "When I was 6 years old," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves, "I lost my legs and my mother in a car accident that changed my life forever. The best medical technology available at the time gave me the ability to walk again. But something was still missing. I couldn't feel the ground beneath me. I couldn't run without fear. I couldn't trust these foreign objects attached to my body." Maxwell gestured to his prosthetics, now visible as he moved across the stage. "Then I met a 7-year-old girl named Lily Carter, who had no scientific training, no medical degree, and at the time, not even a pair of shoes. What she did have was wisdom, the understanding that technology alone isn't enough. True healing requires connection, trust, and belief in possibilities that seem impossible." Indeed, as he continued his presentation, Maxwell demonstrated the capabilities of his biodynamic prosthetics, showing how he could now navigate different terrains, feel varying textures, and even perform complex athletic movements with natural fluidity. The audience watched in amazement as he completed a series of challenging physical tasks that would have been difficult even for someone with biological limbs. "What you're seeing isn't just advanced technology," Maxwell explained. "It's the result of a philosophy that treats prosthetics not as replacements, but as extensions of the self. New limbs that must be befriended, understood, and ultimately integrated, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually." From the front row, Richard and Eleanor watched with immense pride. Their lives had become intertwined in ways none of them could have predicted that day on the playground. Richard's company had evolved from a purely profit-driven enterprise to a leader in humanitarian applications of neural technology. Eleanor's holistic approach had gained respect in even the most traditional medical circles. And the children who had brought them together had grown into remarkable young people whose influence extended far beyond their years. As Maxwell's presentation concluded, he invited Lily to join him on stage for the question and answer session. Together, they fielded inquiries from doctors, engineers, and educators, each answer demonstrating both Maxwell's technical knowledge and Lily's intuitive understanding of the human element. When a renowned neurologist asked about future applications of the technology, Maxwell deferred to Lily with a smile. "This is where Lily's vision always exceeds our current capabilities. She's been right so far about what's possible, so I've learned to trust her predictions." Lily stepped forward confidently. "The next frontier isn't just feeling with prosthetics, but a true bidirectional relationship where the artificial limbs can anticipate needs and adapt in real time to the user's intentions without conscious thought, just as natural limbs do. We're already seeing early signs of this with Maxwell's latest prototypes." The final question came from a young resident physician who asked simply, "What's been the most difficult part of your journey?" Maxwell and Lily exchanged a glance, silently deciding who should answer. Maxwell nodded slightly, yielding the floor to his friend. "The hardest part," Lily began thoughtfully, "wasn't the physical challenges or the technology limitations. It was the moment when Maxwell had to decide if he was defined by what he had lost or by what he could become. That's the same challenge every person faces after trauma, whether their scars are visible or not." She looked at Maxwell with a smile that held years of shared experience. Fortunately, he chose to become more than anyone thought possible, including himself. The audience rose in a standing ovation that continued long after Maxwell and Lily had exited the stage. Backstage, they were met by Richard and Eleanor, along with representatives from hospitals and rehabilitation centers eager to implement the Lily Carter Protocol in their own facilities. Hours later, when the formal engagements had concluded, the four of them escaped to a quiet restaurant overlooking the San Francisco Bay. As they celebrated the successful presentation, Maxwell noticed Lily staring pensively out at the water. "What's on your mind?" he asked, recognizing the expression that typically preceded one of her insights. "I was thinking about that last question," she replied, "about the hardest part of the journey." "You answered it perfectly," Maxwell assured her. Lily shook her head slightly. "I answered what was hardest for you, but for me, the hardest part was different." "What was it?" Eleanor asked, curious about her granddaughter's perspective. "The hardest part for me was understanding why our paths crossed in the first place," Lily said softly. "Why a billionaire's son and a girl with no shoes ended up at the same school on the same day." "Scholarship program," Richard supplied practically, though his expression showed he understood she was asking a deeper question. "Yes, but why that program? Why that school? Why did my parents have to die and Maxwell's mother too? Why did he lose his legs?" Lily's questions tumbled out, revealing thoughts she had carried for years. "For a long time, I struggled to make sense of it all." "And now?" Maxwell prompted gently. Lily smiled, the wisdom that had always seemed beyond her years now, matched by the maturity of her face. "Now I understand that some questions don't have answers. They have purposes instead. Maybe we don't need to know why things happened the way they did. Maybe it's enough to know that because they did, thousands of children can now run who couldn't before." The profound simplicity of her statement settled over the table. Richard reached for Eleanor's hand, while Maxwell nodded in silent agreement with Lily's assessment. "Tomorrow's visit to the Tokyo Center is going to be exciting," Eleanor said after a moment, steering the conversation toward their upcoming international tour. "They've implemented some fascinating modifications to the basic protocol." As the adults discussed logistics, Maxwell and Lily stepped outside onto the restaurant's terrace to enjoy the evening breeze. Below them, the lights of the city reflected on the bay's dark waters, creating a mirror image of the world above. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't spoken to me that day?" Maxwell asked, leaning against the railing beside her. "If you just ignored the sad boy with the metal legs?" Lily considered this. "Sometimes. But I think we would have found each other eventually. Some connections are just meant to be." Maxwell nodded, understanding the truth in her words. Their friendship had evolved as they grew, weathering the transition from childhood to adolescence with its inevitable changes. They were different in many ways. Maxwell, the technical prodigy advancing prosthetic science. Lily, the intuitive healer who could reach the human heart behind the medical challenge. Yet those differences had only strengthened their bond over the years. "The new centers are going to help so many people," Maxwell said, gazing out at the city. "Sometimes I can't believe how far we've come from that first science fair project." "I can," Lily replied simply. "I always could see what was possible, even when no one else could." Maxwell smiled, remembering the unwavering faith she had shown in him when he couldn't even walk without crutches. "That's your superpower, seeing possibilities. And yours is making them real," Lily countered. "We make a good team that way." As they stood together on the threshold between childhood and the young adults they were becoming, Maxwell felt a profound gratitude for the journey they had shared. From a chance meeting on a playground to an international movement changing thousands of lives, all because a shoeless girl had looked at his metal legs and called them superhero legs. "We should go back inside," Lily said eventually. "Grandma will worry." Maxwell nodded, but before they turned to leave, he said, "Thank you, Lily. not just for teaching me to run again, but for everything since." "Thank you for listening," she replied with a smile. Not everyone would have. As they rejoined Richard and Eleanor at the table, Maxwell caught his father's eye across the room and saw in it a reflection of his own thoughts. Amazement at how their lives had been transformed by the wisdom of a child, gratitude for the healing they had all found, and hope for the possibilities that still lay ahead. Tomorrow would bring new challenges at the Tokyo Center. The month after would see the opening of the London facility. Beyond that stretched a future filled with advancements none of them could yet imagine. But whatever came next, they would face it together. Two families joined by circumstance and choice, forever connected by the simple, profound truth that Lily had taught them all, that limitations exist primarily in the mind, and that the heart, once it decides something is possible, can achieve what once seemed impossible. For Maxwell Wilson, who had once sat alone on a playground bench believing he would never run again, that truth had become the foundation of not just his mobility, but his entire life. And as he looked at Lily Carter, still wearing the silver bracelet with the running figure after all these years, he knew that some journeys, once begun, never truly end. They simply open doors to new paths, new possibilities, and new ways to run toward whatever awaits beyond the horizon.